So in this segment, we're going to be talking about Labour kind of having a very muddled and very stupid, not stupid, but very wonky, not wonky in the technical sense of very kind of it's more Elizabeth Warren than it is Bernie Sanders, i.e. it's going to appeal to a very specific group of people and the rest are going to be either confused or be like, I don't care. So this is a piece by John Rentoul, which is a good piece. He does, I think I've cited him a few times on the channel. This is another good article here. It's a bit speculative, making up words on the fly, but it's very strange that this has happened at this time. So the fight over who will be Labour's, who will be Keir Starmer's next Shadow Chancellor has begun. So the muffled sound of breaking china coming from deep inside number 10 is distracting the Westminster village from a power struggle across the road, while the sudden elevation of David Frost to the cabinet and the departure of Oliver Lewis, the former deputy Brexit negotiator, oh wait, is he gone as well? Wow. Have been all too visible. The jockeying position in the shadow cabinet has been less conspicuous, and so for some reason Annalise Dodds is on the chopping block here, and I don't understand why. She's not done that badly. I think her policies towards helping small businesses out with the debt they've accrued due to COVID, I think it's a smart move. I would want to see more from her, some more radical positions, but I think she's done okay considering that she is constrained by Keir Starmer. So there is something significant going on in the Labour Party, brought into focus by Keir Starmer's speech, which bombed, by the way, on the economy on Thursday. So this article's from a few days ago, so it'd be last Thursday, depending on when you actually see this video. Which was hyped in advance as a major policy event. Never. Do you know Alistair Campbell is a guy who I detest, but he's very good when it comes to understanding spin and politics. Don't hold press conferences unless you have something to say. Don't have a speech unless you have something specific to say. That would be my version of Campbell's thing. I'm saying when the speech was actually delivered, its new policy, a British recovery bond, fell flat and has already disappeared without a trace. Do you know why it's fallen flat? Because no one cares. No one cares. Like, how many ordinary people buy bonds? A government bond, is a debt security issued by the government to support the government spending and obligations. Government bonds can pay periodic interest payments called coupon payments. So typically people only buy bonds when interest rates are extremely low. Bonds are seen as a safe bet, as somewhere to hold money. So you can buy bonds and they don't really go down in value too much. I think David Packman had a great explainer on government bonds. I'll see if I can find that video and link it. But basically, the only time you really buy bonds is in a massive government downturn. And what happens is if loads of people start buying the bonds, then the value of the bonds goes up, that sort of stuff. So I'll try and find that video and I'll link it below. It's a good video from him, I can't lie. So this idea has fallen flat. Neither the economics nor the politics commentators could see the point of it, and it failed to live up to the windy rhetoric about a failure that's going to look utterly unlike the past. A future, sorry, that's going to utterly. I'm losing it here. A future that's going to look utterly unlike the past. And I guess the correct phrase would be a failure that's going to look utterly unlike the past, because I can see my man losing in 2024. Excuse me. Given that the policy was the product of the partnership at the top of the party between Starmer and Annalise Dodds, the Shadow Chancellor, and given that Starmer's position is not in question, it means that of Dodds may well be. And basically, this speech, it wasn't just. You can't blame just Annalise Dodds for the speech bombing. The speech was awful, because he had no actual policy positions. Like, I'm against inequality. He's like, what are you going to do about it? And it's like, that stuff will come in time. Like, no, if you're going to give a speech about specific issues you have, such as inequality, tell me specifically what you're going to do about it. That's how you can judge if someone's going to take action. If I tell you there are burning injustices, like I was Theresa May, right? And you say, what are you going to do about it? It's like, but there are burning injustices that have to be dealt with. And then you said to me, what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, didn't I tell you about burning injustices? Like, you're going to be like, I don't understand what you're saying. So Given that policy, blah blah blah, shadow cabinet ministers noticed a column by Anne McElvoy in the Evening Standard last week, which said both Starmer and Dodds project anxiety. And to be fair, I do kind of get. I don't know about Dodds because, like I said, she doesn't have a lot of stage presence. I don't know a lot about her, and the problem is she's not going out there enough to kind of show who she is. But I get a lot of anxiety from Keir Starmer when he does interviews and things like that. So I think this is a great take here. When the voters are looking for competence with confidence, which is, Boris Johnson is incompetent, but he's very confident, and he portrays a person that has extreme amounts of confidence. Dodds has a forensic academic mind, very, Elizabeth Warren in that sense, said McElvoy, but she makes economic policy boring. And most politics demands retail skill. And again, this is great. This is a great point here because, one of the main reasons why I think Elizabeth Warren lost, really badly wasn't just because she abandoned medical for all, but she's very, she's a policy wonk and people don't care. Even I don't like policy wonks that much because you're just boring. Like, give me simple, specific things that you're going to do to help the economy. Like, it's not as complex as people make out to be. It just isn't. And I've got a podcast hopefully coming up with Georgia where we're going to talk about, ways to kickstart the economy. But honestly, it's just bizarre, going down this route of a recovery bond because they're trying to project that they're going to be radical and spend money, but also the fact that they're going to be safe and be fiscally responsible. You can do these two things, but if you do them simultaneously and you say these things simultaneously, you can sound quite boring. I don't know. The surest sign that Dodds may not be in the post much longer is that the contenders to replace her are vying for the attention of the leader and the wider party. Ed Miliband, the shadow business secretary, seems that he and Starmer would make a good co-leadership. I don't think so. Being that Starmer was Miliband was the leader in the past. I don't think this is the best idea. Miliband helped get Starmer into the House of Commons in 2015 election, and as a former leader, he has the confidence to handle big parliamentary occasions and television interviews. He doesn't. When Ed Miliband was in TV interviews, he wasn't that great. He was very kind of within himself a bit, and he was very awkward. And Keir Starmer it makes me feel anxious, and he looks very awkward. What you need is someone who projects confidence and someone who is, who can speak well and is brave. That's why Angela Rayner is a good deputy, because she is very confident, she's very brave, and she's very outspoken. So she will speak out if she sees something that she doesn't like. Well, hopefully she will when it comes to Labour, anyways. He was on the Andrew Marr show 2 weeks ago previewing some of the themes of Starmer's speech, and to be fair, I think I saw bits of that interview, and it was great because you had Ed Miliband go against the framing of the question, which is a brave stance to take against an interviewer, and that's something I respected him for. Also, he bodied Boris Johnson a few months ago when he was standing in for Starmer. We can't just carry on with business as usual, Ed Miliband said. We're talking today about supporting businesses. There needs to be a new relationship between the government and business. So what is this new relationship going to look like? This is what pisses me off about these people. The next day, Rachel Reeves, an economist who used to work for the Bank of England, whose front bench role, she's very centristy, in terms of politics, whose front bench role is to shadow Michael Gove, who she's not really doing a good job because Gove seems to get off scot-free from everything. Gove's shrinking empire at the Cabinet Office, delivering a long speech on cronyism in government contracts. Since then, she has pursued that rich theme daily, assisted by yesterday's court ruling that Matt Hancock had broken the law. Again, she talked about insourcing and things like that, which is great. Give me specifics about what you're going to do differently or what you would do differently to problems that are upcoming. This is what I want to see. Meanwhile, Lisa Nandy, the Foreign Secretary, wrote an article for Politico on Thursday, ostensibly on foreign policy, but actually going on economics. It argued that the UK needed a fiscal stimulus to go big on jobs, as Joe Biden has done in the US, which he hasn't really done that much. He lied. Comparing certain actions to Joe Biden is a very dumb move because Joe Biden stitched up the American electorate out of $600 when it came to stimulus, amongst other things. So I'd be very careful about aligning yourself with Joe Biden in this sense. Yvette Cooper, who's someone I actually like in the Labour Party and respect, chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, and overlooked by Starmer when he assembled his shadow cabinet 10 months ago. Despite her economics MSc, has also promoted herself yesterday. Promoted herself yesterday. She shared a video of her and Ed Balls, her husband, holding a mock inquest into her advice that she made. This is some blah 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 personal stuff. So who will Starmer choose? It's unlikely it will be Ed Miliband, which I think is smart. that would be too much refighting from the 2015 election. And I understand that Starmer feels Miliband would not fit well with his ambition to present Labour as a party on the side of business. Miliband's talk when he was leader of businesses. When he was leader of businesses. And this is they need to some commas and something are needed here. When Ed Miliband was leader, he called businesses predators. That has marred him a bit, especially when he seems to think Jeremy Corbyn's relative success in 2017 suggested that he should have gone further in that direction. I mean, Ed Miliband definitely should have done when he came up with policies like we're going to cut student tuition fees to £6,000, and I'm like, rah, you stupid! Like that's not a radical policy. It's just dumb. It's just dumb. Like, you're not going to appeal to many people by saying that. You're trying to be the lesser of two evils when I don't want to vote for either evil. I want to vote for someone who's decent. In his speech on Thursday, Starmer tried to associate Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak with the entire period of Conservative government since 2010. That was a smart move. And he has an equally urgent need to move on, not just from the Corbyn era, but from the Miliband era too. That suggests keeping Dodds where she is, replacing her with Reeves, Nandy or Cooper, or finding someone else. It might be thought that what is most important is getting the economic policy right. The Labour Party under Starmer need to figure out what they're about, because I'm going to go through some stuff and they look very, very stupid. Once the British recovery bond has been binned, Starmer needs to decide who can best sell an economic policy that doesn't strain to be bold, radical, and utterly unlike the past. He needs to find someone who can project confidence, competence, and a good understanding of basic economics. This is an important choice, but unlike the squabbling in number 10, could decide the next election. And I think that going for a bottom-up approach makes sense economically and also makes sense from the Labour Party, and that's something that they need to start pushing now, so that when the elections come up, the framing is already in people's minds. That's something that the Labour Party need to do. So if we go on to talk about Lisa Nandy's article, let's do something first. Actually, there is a poll by this guy John Rentoul on his Twitter feed where he talks about the potential candidates. Ed Miliband number 2, which I think is a bad idea. Rachel Reeves, who praised a Nazi sympathiser because she was the first sitting female MP, not a great look. Lisa Nandy. Yvette Cooper, I think, is a shout. She has an economics background. The only thing is she's very good on the Home Affairs Select Committee, and seeing her body Priti Patel is something that I enjoy a lot. So if that's a sacrifice we have to make, then okay, Yvette Cooper's a shout, but I need to see more about her as well. The only times I really saw her was in the 2015 leadership elections. I think she ran, her, Andy Burnham, there was someone else, some other lady, and Jeremy Corbyn. So I do need to see more from her, see what she actually stands for. But again, she's a good shout. So you got a couple good options there, maybe. Or you got one good option there, really. So apart from Annalise Dodds, obviously. So if we look at this article here, this is a really nice picture. So Lisa Nandy is Shadow Foreign Secretary in the UK's opposition Labour Party. So this is a piece by Lisa Nandy in Politico. When the leaders of the world's largest developed economies meet via video tomorrow, a sharp contrast will be on display. In the United States, Joe Biden has vowed to go big on jobs, but he hasn't really done that. An economic stimulus at the top of the agenda. Again, he's robbed the American electorate of $600 by stimulus checks, which I still don't think have gone out yet. And he's trying to do means testing. So again, aligning yourself here with Joe Biden is a very stupid thing to do. The UK, which is hosting the G7 for the first time since 2013, has not. Prime Minister Boris Johnson may be on the same Zoom call as Biden, but he's on a different wavelength. Johnson's extraordinary omission of fiscal stimulus shows in just a few months since Biden's election, the UK has begun to drift apart from our allies on both sides of the Atlantic, leaving us increasingly distant from mainstream global politics. And the thing, like an article that this is meant to appeal to, are these sort of articles are meant to appeal to politics junkies like me, and kind of more kind of libs and stuff like that, rather than the ordinary public, because this is written in such a way that it's meant to show that in a fancier way that Johnson's economics are not sound. A jobs plan underpinned by coordinated action across the G7 countries to choose fiscal stimulus over tax rises and spending cuts should be at the top of tomorrow's agenda. So fiscal stimulus over tax rises and spending cuts. I agree that fiscal stimulus should be there, but I think tax rises should also be there for big corporations, and a windfall tax should be in place for companies that have made a lot of money through the pandemic. This is something that the Conservative Party are actually going to do, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. should be the top priority. Again, I disagree with spending cuts for multiple reasons. Unfortunately, it won't be, at least not when it comes to the UK. The UK has had the worst economic crisis of any major economy. 1 million UK businesses risk collapsing in the next 3 months. Some 1.7 million people are unemployed, and 5 million more are dependent on a furlough scheme which ends next month. So again, these are good points here. Globally, the picture is nearly as dire. Developing countries also desperately need global action to shore up their economies, allow them to protect their health care systems, distribute coronavirus vaccines, which we have some good news on from India, which we'll talk about in a separate video, and reduce the spread of mutations of the virus. The US is already proposing much greater access to borrowing for those countries to prevent economic contagion spreading across the world. On health and economic grounds, Biden is right to say coordinated economic action is the priority. By moving quickly, we will get the vaccine to every corner of the globe. By moving together as the world's major economies, we will achieve far more for less than we could do anything alone. Again, without offering specifics here, this is not the best. Given the scale of the challenge this year and the next are not the moment to cut spending or raise taxes. Again, I disagree with this point here. Raising taxes on high earners and businesses that have made a lot of money from the pandemic is a fine move. The problem is that this is precisely what Britain's Chancellor Rishi Sunak seems to be on track to propose in the forthcoming budget in just a few weeks' time. Even as Biden looks to inject trillions into job creation in the US, briefings emerging from the British government suggest tax rises are on the Chancellor's agenda, and Number 10 lacks the strength and inclination to resist. So what she's done here is very intelligent, which is separate the Chancellor from Number 10 slightly by saying that this is what tax rises and a lack of stimulus is what Rishi Sunak wants, and Boris Johnson isn't strong enough to go against it. That's smart. This is something I respect. This is decent politics. This is why tomorrow Johnson will find himself once again one step out of the line with the direction of travel of our major allies, confronting a reality that bumps up uneasily against his rhetoric. He vowed to lead the global recovery, but given the chance, he has dodged the decisive action necessary to do so. Something that you could tar Johnson with a lot, not being decisive. On so many major questions, from global economic recovery to the action necessary to deal with China and the role of Western countries in arming Saudi Arabia, Britain finds itself increasingly isolated, even though that the Americans are still acting to quote-unquote defend Saudi Arabia. Again, this is fraudulent here because she's just going off the bold headlines that Joe Biden's kind of putting out there without looking actually at the details. I mean, are people going to look at the details? Most likely not. So again, is the smart politics kind of, but is deceptive at the same time. And certain people will see straight through it, such as your boy here. In addition to doing more at home, Johnson should put jobs at the top of his G7 agenda, something I agree with. The leaders meeting tomorrow, they've already met, must move on from the era of global retreat and discredited economics like austerity that Johnson, that's something she should have mentioned, austerity, that Johnson represents, and support Biden's focus on delivering substantial fiscal stimulus. Again, we've just mentioned that he's robbed, $600 off the stimulus checks, and also we don't know, who's actually going to get these checks. Also, the fact that they haven't done a furlough scheme like we have. So again, it's a bit deceptive here, this piece. From Lisa Nandy, not surprising, but I do my best to at least give you as much detail as I can, and to put forward to jobs plan for when leaders plan to meet in person at a summit in Cornwall in June. So it's a decent attack piece, but comparing ourselves to America when we've had things like a furlough scheme and better small business loans than America, I think is very disingenuous. But again, this is how politics is played. It's not a clean game. We've got this video here, which is just embarrassing. From this is the Labour's shadow treasury guy or something like that. This is just shocking. And surprisingly, amazingly, Laura Kuenssberg actually knows how to push back in interviews. That amazed me more than anything. Laura Kuenssberg actually pushes back on something. Oh my god, I couldn't believe it.
What we're saying is that this is not the time to consider tax rises. Right, we're in the middle of an economic crisis,
so that's
and
been
this
dropped.
is not the time to do it.
So that's been dropped. That is no longer a commitment by the Labour Party or the Labour leader.
What we're saying is this is not the time to do that in the middle of an economic crisis.
So we can be really clear from you then, as Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury, that you would not support
Shadow Financial something. You heard what he was.
any tax rises at all as the Labour Party right now.
In the budget next week, we don't want to see tax rises. This is not the time to do that.
Okay, well, what happens if, as some speculation suggests, and some sources suggested to me, that the government is
Sources.
intent on raising corporation tax for the biggest businesses, and there's also a suggestion that they might introduce a windfall tax on some of the companies, perhaps supermarkets, who've done very well in some areas during the pandemic because people have been shopping online. Are you suggesting we'll get to a position where actually the Labour Party would vote against the Conservative Party wanting to put taxes up on business or introduce a windfall tax to help pay for the cost of COVID?
All right, so I just want to say that I actually support these two measures. I need to see what they are specifically, but a tax increase on, big corporations and a windfall tax are two things I agree with. If we look at what a windfall tax is, a windfall tax was a tax that were described as the excess profits of private utilities and was introduced by the Labour Party of Tony Blair in 1997. But in this context, what a windfall tax would be is that those companies that have made a lot of money, they would get hit with an extra tax to kind of help the taxpayer out, which again, these are two good ideas here. I'd have to see specifics, but in principle, I do agree with these two measures.
Let's see what the government put out in the budget next week rather than talking about hypothetical.
But that's the logical, you've just said it's not time for tax rises, so the implication of that
She's pushing back, fam. I can't believe it.
is that Labour would vote against a Conservative government introducing taxes on business to help pay for all the things that you want, like, extra money for kids to catch up.
As I say, let's see what the government put out in their budget next week. My point is that what the government should be focusing now is investment in growth and trying to get the economy back on its feet. And if you have a country where businesses are closing, where people don't have money to spend in the economy, and where you haven't got investment going into public services and infrastructure, that is no way to get the economy back on its feet.
See, what he just gave there was a stock answer. What he gave there was a stock answer because he talked about, what you need is to give people money and blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, from this windfall tax, you can fund stimulus in part from a windfall tax and from, slight tax increases on big corporations that have made profits during this crisis. And so what he gave there was a very stock answer. And the simple fact is, the Labour Party are wrong on this and their economic policies are very muddled. The fact that came up with those government bonds, that was embarrassing. And you've got this now as well, where the Labour Party are moving to the right of the Conservative Party when it comes to things like a windfall tax and a higher tax on corporations that made a lot of money from COVID, which is just shocking from the Labour Party. I do not understand why they've done this. Whoever is in these focus groups and whatever, the Labour Party have a lot of work to do before 2025, because this video on the economics of what Labour are proposing here are very, very stupid. Because these corporations, certain corporations have made a lot of money from the pandemic. And so should they get hit with, a windfall tax? Yes, because we do have to fund the recovery of the country. We do need programs to fund stimulus. And so, the Labour Party here pushing for, stimulus and not for higher tax rises on high earners who have benefited massively from the pandemic just looks stupid. Just looks really stupid and really economically illiterate from, the Labour Party. And if Annalise Dodds is on the chopping block, I hope whoever they bring in is someone competent. My hope would be Yvette Cooper. But again, I need to see more from her. I need to see more from these Labour frontbenchers, because I'm not seeing a lot from these Labour MPs. I'm seeing a massive lack of talent from the Labour Party. And if you want to learn more about economics and things like that, you can join me on Discord. And if you have any specific questions for a podcast I've got coming up with my friend Georgia, who's got a background in economics, I'd be much obliged. So I'll leave the link for the Discord in the description. And if you want to join the Discord and we can talk about this sort of stuff, I'd be very happy to do that. But the Labour Party here have been increasingly embarrassing when it comes to economics, and I have no idea what they're doing, where they want to be politically on the old spectrum. And their kind of plans here, all they're doing is, they say they don't want to be anti-government for the sake of it, but in this case, it feels like they very much are. They're trying to appeal to kind of centre-left, centre-right voters when that's not going to work. And so, I don't know what more to say apart from let me know what you think in the comments below. Join the Discord, like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.